Hi guys, so today we're going to talk about solving two-step equations. So far in class you've only learned about one-step equations, so this video is a little preview for tomorrow's lesson, and hopefully it will help you get a head start. So our steps are exactly the same. We want to identify the variable we are trying to solve. And then step 2, we're going to translate the expression. Step 3, identify the inverse. Operations. And step 4 is to solve. Okay, so let's take a look at example number 1. So I'm going to identify my variable first. Okay. Step 2, I'm going to translate. So I have a positive 23 minus a 1 times x. Okay, so here's where things can get a little confusing. So when I'm identifying the inverse, I'm identifying piece by piece. So I have a positive 23, and the inverse of positive 23 is negative 23. And I have a takeaway, negative 1 times x. So when I'm looking at this, and I'm identifying the variable, I want to think of it in layers. Okay, so the first layer is this positive 23, and that's what I need to get rid of. The next layer is that negative 1x, and that's not a minus part. So this minus is actually irrelevant, but it's a negative 1 times x. So that's what we're going to do the inverse of. So instead of negative 1 multiplied, we're going to be dividing by negative 1. Okay, because we want to think of it in layers. So, when I go to solve, I want to put my equal line down the middle. And I'm going to draw those layers again. So, we're getting the x by itself, but what's affecting that x? What's affecting that x is that negative 1 and that 23. So I always want to start with my outer layer, which was this first inverse. So that's my first layer. That's what I'm going to do on both sides of the equation. Opposites cancel each other out. I didn't do anything with this yet, so I'm going to bring it down. And then in my calculators, I can do 14 take away 23. And that gives me negative 9. Okay? The next thing affecting, or the next layer we see, is this one. That's the negative 1x. And I want to keep my x, but I just want to get rid of that negative 1. And we do that by our next inverse, which is dividing by negative 1. Okay, my inverses cancel out. The x gets brought down. And in my calculators, I'm going to do negative 9 divided by negative 1. And that gets me positive 9. Okay, let's try that again. So I have 2 times x plus 7. Okay, let's think of this in layers. This is the variable I'm trying to find. The first thing bothering that variable is that 2. Think back to our celebrity example. The x is the celebrity. We got its bodyguard. That's bothering it. And then on the outside layer is our fans, or that extra number. So think of our inverses. 2 times, the inverse is division. And plus 7, our inverse is subtract. Okay, so which one am I going to do first? Let's write down our problem. Let's go ahead and drop this down. Okay, I'm going to draw my layers again. I have my 2x, the first thing affecting the x, and the second thing. But I need to start from the outside in. So I need to start with my outside layer, and in that outside layer is that positive 7, and the inverse of that positive 7, or that plus 7, is minus. I didn't do anything with the 2x, so I bring it down. My inverses cancel. And in my calculator, I'm going to do 21, take away 7. Okay, the next thing, or my next layer, is this 2x. So I got to get rid of that 2 out of that layer. And to get rid of that 2 times, we do divide. Inverses cancel. We're left with x on this side. And in my calculator, I do 14 divided by 2. And that gets me x equals 7. Alright, we're going to practice this again tomorrow, so if you're confused, don't worry, we're going to keep going.